Okay, I am trying to build a Frankenpen for a client, and there are issues with this particular task. Let's see if I can explain them to myself, and maybe it'll help me find the right pen for this person. I sent him a Frankenpen that was inside of this body, and it worked okay. There was a little, the nib had some damage to it, and in my haste to get it out the door, I may not have tweaked it as much as I could have, and it came back, and I have tweaked it since, and it seems to be as good as it's going to be able to get. It works fine. It works well, I think. It just has the cosmetic issues that it still has on certain parts of the nib that I don't want to continue to burnish it and tweak it and burnish it and tweak it, because every time you do that, you add one more bit of, quote, fatigue to the metal. So to get it back to 99% of its ability is as good as I feel I want to deal with. Okay, so while this pen was in his hands, with this nib, he did tweak the feed a little bit. He tweaked he tried it out, setting it himself, and pulled the nib out, put it back in, shaved the feed a little bit, did some other things. But one of the issues, I think, was he felt that this nib, which was a very elegant nib, needed something more elegant than this. Now this is a little clunky, as you can plainly see, but it's made even more clunky by the client, who doesn't post the pen. He is a non-poster, so he holds it like this. So all of the weight of this is filled with ink, which is why it's getting all over the place. Here, let's just get it out of there. Which is, so the pen is moved forward a bit. That might make it seem less clunky if this is on the back. I don't know if that would help. But an option that I had for a non-posted pen might be a desk pen, because this has the elegance of a regular dip pen nib, which I think is something that he liked. He also wanted a pen to be thinner in the barrel and yet hold ink. And this is about as thin a barrel as can hold this nib. It's a big nib. It has to be the barrel obviously has to be bigger than the nib. And this pen is even bigger than this one, but it's thinner than this one. He also sent me this one as sort of a guide of, I forget even what now at the moment. There's so many different balls that have to be juggled with this particular, not with the client particularly. He's very accommodating, but in terms of his ideal pen, he might be asking for more than I'm able to give him. Now, if I have a thinner, smaller Victorian dip pen nib, I could probably fit it in a thinner, I mean, I can fit it in a thinner pen, but I think he also wants it to be a desk pen. So anyway, what I did was I put this nib from this pen and the feed that he altered into this Schaefer desk pen, and it seems to be fine. So can we call it a day? Not really. There was also something that he liked about an eyedrop filler rather than a sack lever filling pen. And I can't remember exactly why or what that was all about. It had to do with the ink flow, but I couldn't understand how that would work either. Um, and ink flow with a Frankenpen, especially with a Frankenpen, is more determined, I think, on how the nib and the feed are placed in the section. There's so many different factors that are in play here. The other thing about desk pens is very few of them seem to have as airtight a seal as a fountain pen screw cap or even a slip cap is. There's, I think part of the idea of a desk pen was you'd pull it out easily. You didn't have to yank it. You didn't have to unscrew it. You just lifted it out of the socket and it was easy to do. But they're not as airtight, and a pen could dry up while it's sitting there not being used. So anyway, I'm going to send this back to him, and I'm going to send him the link to this thing, this video, and he can take a look at it and tell me I need to go back to the drawing board, which I guess I'm happy to do. But the thing is, this diameter of this pen with this nib needs to be fatter than the nib. I can't cram it into something thinner. So anyway, that's that. And now I'm getting green ink all over my nose, but that's okay. I'm Mr. Butterfingers today. I'm dropping things left and right. So I'm going to set this very carefully over here. I got up at 2 this morning and realized that it was actually 3 because of daylight savings time. So I'm sort of my usual time zone is being appreciated here. Now, he also wants, the same guy that wants that pen, wants a really, really fine nib. Now, he sent me in his letter a grain of rice with my name and the word fine written on the grain of rice with a fountain pen. With actually this pen, which I think he said he ground to be really, really fine. This pen is so heavy. It's a modern metal pen, and it seems very heavy and very slippery. I think this was the fine nib he used. And it seems to me I have a pen that's equally fine as that. But was that this one? Did I put this one in there because it's equally fine? Come on, ink. I don't have any ink on my table here. I have dirty water. It's See, this seems equally fine, I think. So I'll send this to him as my attempt at a fine. What I would really like him to do, and what I would like you to do, and you to do, and you to do, selling pens through the mail is so difficult. If you can hop on a bus, get on a plane, get on the subway and visit me, we can do it this so much easier over the table rather than over the phone. And this guy wants to do it. He just has to clear his desk of all sorts of jobs that he does for a living. Though I did try to say, well, you can come up and leave the same day. I think, it might be a lot easier in the long run to deal with testing out pens, me showing a pen and letting him try it out. So I think that's a good idea for really anyone. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you like a pen here, you bring it home, and you don't like it at home. And I try to avoid that if I can. It's sometimes, the paper I use here is smoother than the paper you use at home, and I often say, bring the paper you like. Because my paper is 150 years old in some cases, and I like it because it's really, really smooth. So, sitting in a chair in my house is not easy. Sitting in the chair, writing on a piece of paper with your body twisted in all sorts of funny angles because there's no room for the chair to fit squarely against the table is a trauma. But, I can make room for people. Selling pens at a pen show is often very difficult too, because you're or buying pens at a pen show. The very few people do what I do, which is raise my table up so they're standing and they're able to write like you would at a counter of a pen shop, where most tables are down here like this with the salesman sitting at their chair, and you're standing up here, you're bending over, your ass is sticking out into the aisle, and you're bending over and you're trying to write. And of course, you're going to be way different than you are at home, because that's not how you write at home. You write at your desk or your table. So, when you're here, I will try to make you as comfortable as I possibly can so that you can imitate what it's like at your very own home. I finally found my shellac, and I finally found my caliper. So I'm able to say, okay, this is a extra broad or extra fine or whatever kind of a nib. This is supposed to have a lock on it, which broke. I don't see where it broke. Anyway, neither here nor there. I'm trying to, maybe I'll try to do this later this morning, trying to register so I can print up labels from the post office, USPS label making, and so I don't have to stand in line at a post office to mail a package of pens to you. I'll be able to do it right from my desktop, which should make it easier for me to send these things out and sell these things through the mail. It should. I'm saying it should make it easier. Okay, what does this do? This is a swan. Anyway. Oh, this is a big crack. Well, it's missing almost all of its threads. Looks pretty. See, this is what pen collectors want. They want something that looks just like this. And many pen collectors never unscrew the cap to look at a nib, so why bother? I should be able to sell that pen to someone because it's nice color. They won't care that it's cracked. I mean, they will care, but it shouldn't make any difference because many pen collectors don't use pens. They just have them like this, capped in a little row next to all the other ones in a case. See how pretty my pens are. Yep, they're pretty. I got this pen in the mail recently, and it is missing some of its little teeth, which I did not realize. I don't know if I have a feed that will fit it. Fill it up with ink and see how. You know, broken teeth on a comb feed like this, it goes from being cosmetic to being something that's a little less cosmetic than that, because it can disturb the ink flow or cause the ink to pour out. Okay, what ink is this that I'm using? Really a sweet little nib. It's clearly a Waterman nib. It has flexibility as part of its DNA, even though, you know, if someone that really likes flexible nibs would try this pen out, they'd say, oh, it's not flexible at all. Well, you're wrong. It is flexible, but it's not, its range is way too small for a flexible lover to love, but they shouldn't not love it. Because there are times when having a nib that flexes this much is what you need. Why is this ink? This was happening with my customer here the other day. The ink was not laying down. It was very weird because it looked, I don't know. Come on, Waterman, get with the program. What's wrong with your ink? Suddenly. This is a new bottle as well. Any bottle that isn't too contaminated. It's not like I'm pouring ink out of this bottle, which I will start doing. In the 20s or so. It's very weird. See, it's doing that again. This ink was doing this on a completely different paper. And I bet if I try it with other ink, see what happens. It sort of beads up. See that? So let's empty this out. Okay, now this over here, this here bottle, this is green. That I don't know what company made it, but you can see that I didn't rinse out the whole thing, and see, that's not doing it. It's bleeding, but it's not dividing into. It's like this Waterman blue ink has water in it, oil and vinegar. It has, where the vinegar is the pigment and the oil is the non-pigmented part of the ink, and somehow they flow out of the pen and then divide into their. Is that what's happening? See, it's not doing it right now. Maybe because there's with some of that green ink still there. Come on. Fuck. Okay, why does it do that? I'm at 54%, going along perfectly fine, and suddenly it decides to shut down. And then I have to plug it in. It looks like it's completely out of power. I plug it in, turns back on, it's back at 54%. Okay, this isn't broken, I hope. Anyway, I better turn this off before it shuts down again. Bye.